The Sketcho Show Podcast.
Ladies and gentlemen, up until now you've seen the creature perform the simple mechanics of motor activity, but for what you are about to see next, we must enter quietly into the realm of genius. Ladies and gentlemen, mesdames et messieurs, Damen und Herren, from what was once an inarticulate mass of lifeless tissues, may I now present a cultured, sophisticated man about town. Hit it!
The Sketchomatic Show.
Sketchomatic!
The milestone episode I've been waiting for. This is episode 50, ladies and gentlemen, good folks tuning in. I can't tell you how excited and just a tad nervous in an exciting way to have this next guest on my podcast. I mean, this episode in particular is dedicated to the sales team here at iHeartMedia Los Angeles, all right? Just for you having to put up with my shenanigans all the time. But this is like the epitome of leadership right here on this podcast. It doesn't get any bigger than this, okay?
Wow.
Without further ado, the president of sports, former president of iHeartMedia, right here on the Sketcho Show podcast, making his debut, Kevin LeGrett.
Oh my God.
That is, first of all, a great introduction, but you're too kind. I appreciate that. But most importantly, congratulations, 50 episodes. That's really, really solid.
Yeah, it took a while to get here, man. And I got to tell you right now, let me just point out that we're recording this podcast episode inside Big Boy's Neighborhood Prod Studio, which is held by the great Juan Velasquez and Chuck Nunley, otherwise known as Chuck the Old Soul, who is a newer member on the production team. I asked them permission. I was granted permission. These mics, Kevin LeGrett, sound super crispy clean.
But you realize why they said yes. Because
you're here.
Boy, no. Big Boy was working very hard for a long time to get me to approve moving them into this prod studio.
That's right.
We spent a lot of time between Thanksgiving and Christmas last year. Mm-hmm. We got this done for them. I was very, very proud of it. There was a bunch of different things that were going on that no one realized I was forcing to get done by a certain time because I knew I was moving on to run iHeart Sports as well as iHeart Political.
Let's jump right into it.
Cool.
You, like I stated at the top, that you were a former 2-term president of iHeart.
Everything. Sales, marketing, programming, the whole pit. It all reports into me.
And then you shed that skin.
Yes.
And you moved on to sports of iHeart, which is on the 4th floor now, right?
Correct.
So the two are conjoined by the staircase. Let me ask you, were you the one that thought of the staircase idea?
I didn't think of it. I'm the one that fought like cats and dogs to keep it. When I first got to this building in June 15th, 2015, I started, was my first day, and this place looked like a law firm. And there were high cubes. No one talked to anybody. The 5th floor was the 5th floor. The 4th floor was the 4th floor.
Separated.
The 3rd floor was no one talked.
Right.
And one of the things I really liked about what Bob Pittman did, our CEO and chairman in New York, was he built an unbelievable staircase that I thought really brought everything together. And it's funny, if you walk down that staircase, and you probably haven't, I think it's a 4-step, Dave Weiss, our marketing person for our AMs, actually put a label there that says staircase to Kevin.
Are you serious?
Instead of stairway to heaven, it was staircase to Kevin, because my thing was on the top, because he knew how much I fought for that.
Shout out to Dave Weiss.
Exactly. We spent probably a little too much money on that staircase, but I really believe it made a big difference, and it gets people interacting more.
Yeah, it definitely has this effect. I remember when they were building it, I was like, man, it was a long construction project. Half of the building looked like Dexter's Kill Room with all the saran wrap and plastic everywhere. And now, I mean, it's like the future when you walk in here. It's definitely the best looking radio station in Los Angeles, period.
No question.
Right?
I'm very proud that I put the first sledgehammer into the plywood.
Oh, you did?
It was great. It was great. I still have the picture. It was very fun. My wife, someone sent the picture to my wife. My wife said, "You look like you're enjoying that."
Yeah.
And I go, wait till I get home. Tearing down the house.
Man, that's probably could have been another in a parallel universe construction Kevin LeGrett or foreman Kevin LeGrett.
I love it.
All right. So upon going through your LinkedIn in the preparation for this episode, Kevin LeGrett, I got to tell you, man, I don't know who wrote this for you, but it's intense. It's heavy. There's a lot going on. It's just so impressive
Thank you.
Not just the way it's written, but what's in there. Let me just breeze through some of this real quick. I don't know how long it's been since you've heard this, but here we go. Kevin is a 23-year media executive offering prolific fast-track record of strategic leadership success in driving top-line performance, which has generated tremendous bottom-line profit growth across all platforms for the biggest media companies in the world, including CBS Radio, Citadel Broadcasting, and currently iHeartMedia. I mean, it goes on. A dynamic, versatile, and innovative communicator and negotiator with particular success in revitalizing underperformance media operations, developing and motivating winning teams, and providing the leadership, there's that word, to consistently outperform the market. And then it closes out. Highly effective and interfacing with all constituent groups in support of business objectives. Kevin is a well-respected member of the industry due to operations expertise, pioneering vision, and a relentless commitment to excellence in all pursuits.
I'll tell you what, I should probably read that a little bit when I'm down on myself or when I'm driving home and doubting myself.
That made me feel good.
It made me feel really good, especially your delivery. I'm like, I may need to tape that and play it a couple times because we all doubt ourselves. We all say to ourselves, are we good? Are we good enough for this? And like you said, you walk in these hallways and you're around unbelievable broadcasters, whether talent. It's Big Boy, Bill Handel, legendary programmers like Don Martin, Robin Bertolucci, etc. And you say to yourself, damn, am I worthy?
Right.
And, at the end of the day, it all comes down to the people. It all comes down to leading people and coaching people the right way. And that's one of the things that I really love to do. As a kid growing up, I was a big sports guy, and I've always loved coaches and how coaches can get into stars' heads a little bit.
Yeah.
And I find myself enjoying more and more when I reading stories about the coaches and how coaches connected to players, particularly great players, how Pat Riley, connected with Magic Johnson, how Phil Jackson was able to motivate the greatest player of all time in Michael Jordan, how those interactions worked, how Billy Martin interacted with some of the great Yankee teams, how Tommy Lasorda was a great manager with the Dodgers and treated, Ron Say differently than he treated Steve Garvey or Steve Yeager. It's really interesting to hear those dynamics and how you're able to mold those, because that's what we do every day. I mean, when I walked in this building in 2015, I was blown away. It was over like 350 employees. I was like, you got to be kidding me.
Really?
But I really made a concerted effort to, number one, get to know all those people as individuals, acknowledge people, let them know you care, look them in the eye, say hello, even if you didn't know their names, because over time you're going to build that relationship. And relationships are what it's all about.
Man, Kevin, so eloquently said. You really have that leadership delivery. And I want to go back. I mean, there's so much to cover in such a short amount of time, a lot to explore, a lot to unpack. And I know that a lot of people know you. Like you said, you're very communicative. And just to touch on that, when I first met you, I knew the name Kevin LeGrett. I hadn't Googled you yet. I really don't like to Google people that I hear about to see what they look like. I like to let it happen organically so I'm not like put off by when I do see. The weird and ironic thing is when I did meet you, you knew me before I knew you. Like I was walking in the hall, hey, what's up, Sketch? And I remember you wearing those little iHeart pins that they had just given. They had just made them.
Exactly.
It was like 2019, maybe a little earlier. I hadn't started working in production officially yet under Tony Sanchez, but I was doing stuff on the side, and that's how I got hired. But I came in one day, and I was like, I'm just walking through, looking around, and you were like, hey, what's up, Sketch? And I was like, wow, who is that? They're like, that's the president. That's Kevin LeGrett. How does he know my name? Is this bad? Like, does my reputation precede me? Because he knew who I was off the top. It never left my mind. I always think about how that happened, and it just stuck with me. It was one of those moments. I was like, how does he know who I am beforehand? But it didn't matter because I knew who you were. Yeah. Just like I knew who Doc Winter was. I didn't know what he looked like either. When I met him, I was like, the face matches the name.
But you told Doc the first time you met him, you said, hey, I knew who you were. I didn't know what you looked like, but LeGrett looks better than you.
Speaking of which, speaking of the good looks and stuff,
good thing you didn't answer that.
No, I know. Look, both of you are distinguished-looking gentlemen. I'll just put it that way. But in regards to the good-looking stuff, and then we're going to get into the career and the origins and all that stuff, but I want to just jump into this. I wrote some notes down. I did a lot of prep for this episode. I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to get to all of it, but here's some of the things that I noticed about Kevin LeGrett, President Kevin LeGrett. The tan is year-round, okay? Now, just as a guesstimate, I would say you have a tanning bed at home and you do some sort of red light therapy because the skin, the tan, it's unbelievable, which makes me think, have you ever done any acting? And if not, why not? Because you have a very telegenic face, Kevin LeGrett.
Well, I'm first and foremost, I'm Sicilian and Italian, so that's why I get the skin. But when I moved out here, I said I'm going to enjoy myself. And the answer is no, I don't have a tanning bed in my house,
Really?
but I was outside a ton. Right now, I'm about as white as I used to be when I lived on the East Coast in New York because I've been spending so much time on the East Coast because of political and things like that. But there's no question, you look better, you look healthier. I like being outside. My wife and I take walks, every Saturday and Sunday, 4 or 5 mile walks and hikes and things like that. I like being in the sun. I like feeling like I'm alive because I come from an area of the country that it was always gray.
Rochester, New York,
you
correct?
got it, Rochester, New York. And I love it. And I love the people there. But it's just you realize that as you live in other places that there's more to the world. And the one thing I love more than anything in Los Angeles is that pretty much every day it's 70 degrees and sunny.
Yeah.
And you can't beat it. You feel a little different. You act a little different. You're a little more energized.
Right.
And when I came out here, I said, I'm going to enjoy this because if I'm moving my family all the way across the country, I'm going to make sure that I really make this part of me. And that's how I got into it. But no, I've never done any acting, never done anything like that.
Wow, that is wild. Because Kevin, along with the looks, and I want to talk more and explore a little bit the moving across the country with the family, because moving is one of the most stressful things a human being can do, period. Even if it's within the same city on the same block, it's still stressful. Going 2,000-3,000 miles across the country is insanity, but I did it myself. I moved to Miami in my early 20s and lived there for 6 months, and then I moved back, but that's a whole different podcast. But let me just say this. Before we get into the corporate side of Kevin LeGrett and the origins, Rochester and all that, I've talked to other people around the hallways here that haven't met you yet, like my friend Chuck. And he was like, yo, what's up? That guy, Kevin LeGrett, the president, right? Is he like really a president? Because you have also this type of senator type of look to you. Have you ever thought of actually running for office in any capacity?
Definitely not. Definitely not.
mean,
especially now being as close as I am to politics.
Right.
It's probably the worst industry to get into just because you get torn down so much and everyone's always attacking you.
Right.
I'm not sure my skin is thick enough for that. I think I have some thick skin, but
and tan skin.
Yeah. I wish it was tan right now. It's been a rough winter out here.
This is the whitest you're still tan, Kevin.
Well, this is my natural then. I wish I was tan.
It's really wild how you're able. I'm Mexican. I can't stay as tan as you, but I'm also quarter Italian, and I still can't. I'm like powder during the winter.
So you love good food. Between Mexican food and Italian food, man, I can't get better.
What's your favorite food, since we're on that subject real quick?
All Italian. I could eat pasta every day. It's bad for you. It hurts your gut. You get a little chunky there. I was just talking to Lecetto about trying to lose weight and get yourself slim.
Shout out to Lecetto on his weight loss journey.
No question.
He looks like Bad Bunny now. I call him Lecetto Bad Bunny. Yeah.
Fantastic. I'm so proud of him. The first time I saw Lecetto, I made him my son, my third son, and I call him Lecetto LeGrettio. And he's always loved that, and he's taken that as a badge of honor, but I always check in with him and make sure he's doing good. I adopted him. I knew I needed to.
Lech is lucky.
I had to pay him $100.
LeGrett.
I told him if he lost 50 pounds, I'd pay him $100. He lost 100 pounds and wanted me to give him 200. I gave him the 100. I said, I'm not giving you any more than that.
That was the original deal.
Exactly.
Right? But yeah, as far as like running, you have that senator type of look that I feel like one day we may just see Kevin LeGrett on the ballot.
Yeah, I don't think that happens.
It's all right, though.
Yeah.
I mean, you may play one on TV if you ever got approached.
I would love to. Come on now.
Right?
I would definitely do that. I figure if Big Boy and Woody and others in this building can be on television and do appearances in movies, why can't I?
Right. I mean, just a little cameo, a LeGrett cameo.
It'd be great.
So look, the origin stories of Kevin LeGrett, like we mentioned, you're originally from Rochester, New York. How do you venture from Rochester, New York into radio in general? Like, what is the original spark and interest that got you involved in the corporate media radio industry? What gave you that, and who was like your inspirations and whatnot?
Really no one. I never thought I would get into radio. I did as an internship. My senior year of college, I was playing basketball, and my last semester, I needed to take one religion class. I needed to get an internship, and I needed to take one philosophy class or something. It was like a blow-off thing. And my advisor suggested I, apply to this radio station, 96.5 WCMF in Rochester. I interned there, had a ball. It was great. And at, probably about 2 weeks before it ended, the program director, his name was Stan Main, came up to me and said, "Hey, I have an opportunity for you. A paid opportunity for you to work for a concert promoter. It's called the Rochester Broadway Theater League. They do all the shows at the big shed, which was the Finger Lakes Performing Arts Center. I think it'd be a really cool job. I think you'd be great at it." And, you know, I was planning on going to law school, and I was deferred to second semester at the University of Albany. And I'm like, yeah, why not? Why don't we try it, see if we can do it? And lo and behold, I started doing it, and it was a peon job, but I enjoyed it. I actually excelled pretty quickly. People loved my work ethic, and they loved my attention to detail. And from there, I did it for about a year and a half, 2 years, and lo and behold, WCMF called me back and said, "Hey, we have an opening in our promotion and marketing department. We'd like you to come in, but not only to be the marketing director for one station, we're in the process of buying these other 3 stations, and we want you to run the entire cluster." And so I did that. I was young. I mean, I was 23 years old. I did that for a couple years, and then lo and behold, I got a knock on the door from the general manager. His name was Bob Morgan, and he said, "You're really talented. And I think down the road, you're going to be a general manager someday, but you need to get some experience in sales." And he pushed me really hard to go into sales. And I didn't want to go into sales.
You didn't want to do
as
it.
a kid growing up,
Right.
all I could think of was WKRP in Cincinnati, the TV show, and Herb Tarlick with the loud jackets. I'm
Classic.
like, that's not me.
Yeah.
But I did it. I trusted him. I did it. My first, 30, 60, 90 days were really, really hard. And then I started hitting my stride. And I realized it was all about marketing. It was all about relating to people. And I excelled. And I did that for a year. And then I got promoted to being the local sales manager the next year. And then the next year I got promoted to being the general sales manager. And about 18 months later, I became the director of sales. And at 27 years old, Bob left to go run a company called American Tower. And I got a knock on the door, and it was from my regional. His name was Don Belucas. And he said, "Kid, I've got good news. I got bad news for you." I said, "What is it?" He goes, the bad news is Mel Carmazan, our CEO, thinks you're too young and not qualified for this role, so you're going to report directly to him. The good news is I'm making you the general manager, and you're going to be the youngest general manager in the history of CBS radio." And that's where it started.
God damn, Kevin LeGrett.
Yeah.
Let me just tell you that you jumped leaps and bounds. And you said promoted, one after another, months apart, maybe just a little over a year apart. You literally were just galloping your way to the top. I mean,
part of it is the sacrifice you're willing to make. Like because I was an athlete, I always believed that if I worked hard, things would pay off for me. And I always believed that if I was willing to sacrifice more than other people, that it was going to come back in spades to me. And when I was younger, that definitely worked. Now you look back and you become an old man like me, and you say to yourself, did I make all the right decisions? Did I make all the right sacrifices? Because, could I have been a better friend? Could I have been a better father? Could I have been a better husband if I hadn't made some of those? Could I be closer to God, the things that are important to me, if I hadn't made all those sacrifices? But the reason I excelled so much is I outworked everybody. I was in the office at 6:30 in the morning. I was in the office at 8:30 at night.
Until
I was in the
closed,
office.
right?
Yeah, I was in the office Saturday and Sunday.
First one to get there, last one to leave.
No question. And especially when I was doing the sales thing, because I didn't like it, I forced myself. It was almost like when I was out of shape and I was playing college basketball and I had a great summer and I got back into school, and all of a sudden the first 4 or 5 times we had to run, I was throwing up because I was out of shape. So I told myself, I don't like this, but I'm going to do what I did when I was in college. I'm just going to dig in here and fight through it. And I was working Saturday and Sunday. No one else was working Saturday and Sunday. So guess what? I was getting sales that they weren't getting. And so I always tried to find an angle through hard work that could distinguish me. And the other thing that I think is important, and I say this to people all the time, is find where the gap is in an organization and become that glue. Be a glue person. Whatever assignment I've ever gotten, whether it's to run LA, whether it was to run Rochester, whether it was when I had markets like Louisville and West Palm and things like that, I always walk into an organization and I want to figure out who the glue people are. The people that, number one, don't get the recognition, but without them, the entire organization starts collapsing a little bit.
Sounds like me.
And it's important. And let me tell you something. I'll give you a compliment right now.
Go ahead.
You and Tony were the guys that I could go to during COVID. As you know, I was here every day during COVID. I never not came in. Yeah. I may have came in a little later.
I remember.
8:30.
Yeah.
And I remember walking this building in afternoons after like 3 o'clock and no one was here.
Yeah.
And I'm like, this building used to have 350, 370 people in it.
It used to be bustling with people.
It was so depressing. But when I started doing my updates on the air, and you used to tape them for me and produce them for me.
It was
you
all in this together things, right?
Totally.
Yeah, the company, we're shouting out the little companies that were there, you know, we needed to support our clients and whatnot. But that was just to bring it back to that pandemic that, you know, when everything was shut down, and seeing you here at the station along with Tony Sanchez, and I'd come in. That was, I think, when you and I really started to communicate more.
Absolutely.
Like we kind of knew each other. Obviously, we knew each other more at that point. And because it was a special moment in time, I don't want to say special, but a very unique position in time that we were all in.
Yeah.
And I felt like that whole little campaign we were doing about all in this together, it was special and it was important. Yeah. You know what I mean? And you know, you gave me that opportunity to do that. Now, let me just point out again, besides the tan and the senator look and all the incredible achievements you've accomplished in such a short amount of time in your early career, did you ever want to be on the air? Because you do have a great delivery, Kevin. I mean, you sound... It's like, did you take speech classes? I mean, how did you get to be so...
I took a bunch of interview classes when I was in college. I mean, I one of my majors is in communication, but I never really did. I've spoken so many times in front of clients and in front of staffs. I feel like over time you get better and better. And I was always drawn to great storytellers. You know, it's one of the reasons why I have so much respect for Big Boy, because he's a great storyteller. Yeah. Back in the East Coast, you know, I talk about a guy named Brother Weeze, who's just a phenomenal storyteller. And whether it's a coach like a Nick Saban or Mike Krzyzewski, or whether it's, you know, somebody who does great interviews like Diane Sawyer, Barbara Walters back in the day, etc. Yeah. I always was immersed by, you know, putting people at ease, number one, and then number two, being able to articulate your thoughts clearly, concisely, and at a point that people can walk away with it. It's one of the reasons why I try to bucket little sayings like glue people.
Right.
Do you have the people that can fill the gaps for you?
And et cetera. The way you say et cetera, you say exedra. And that always sticks with me. Can you just say it in the clear for me?
Well, we can do this and etc. So, yeah.
I love that. That's just so New York, right? That's a New York thing.
It probably is.
But you don't really have that East Coast... Like, how you doing over here? You know, like you don't have that, like...
No. I was an upstate New York guy. I didn't spend my time in the city. The city really gives you that draw and
the different
accents.
Boroughs?
Yeah, totally.
Because I noticed even some people... I went to Manhattan a couple of times, and some people in Manhattan are just like, hey, how you doing? You're like, normal. Well, I don't want to say normal, but they don't have that accent. Yeah. And then the person right next to them like, hey, get the fuck out of here.
Exactly.
You know, like, what is that? How is it? Because out here in L.A., we all kind of sound alike. We say like a lot. Yeah. You know, like it's hot. We're always complaining about traffic. It's always
the
like
freeways always have a the in front of them.
Yeah. And every complaint ends with a vowel. Noah.
Yeah, exactly.
You notice this?
I hear you.
Right? Let me just stop real quick. I got to take a breath. I mean, I could barely keep up with you, Kevin LeGrett. It's really quite astonishing. Just everything you've said. And but as far as the radio thing, there was no inclination to want to be on the air. Have you ever done any radio?
I've never done any radio. I would love to at some point in my life. I sound like the old chairman of CBS Radio, Dan Mason, that when he retired, he started doing a lot of sports stuff and doing sports play-by-play and color commentary. Because I love sports so much, I would love to have the opportunity. I think I could give a lot of
sports
really good insights. It would be fun. But no, I've never done that. But I do believe this, and I think this is really important. I think that the language that you use creates reality. And it's one of the things I try to tell people all the time when they get caught up in their being negative. I said that language that you're using creates your reality, and you live in the reality that you create. So you can be as happy. We all know those people that are happy, or we've all gone to the hospital and we've volunteered our time, you know, on outreach days, community days, and we find that person that's in a lot of pain, but they're in a great mood. Because they've created their own reality. The language that they're saying is a language of positivity. It's a language of I believe. It's a language of I'm appreciative that I'm just here right now. And I think so many of us need to do things like that and be inspired. And it's one of the things I've always lived by is your language creates your reality. So I try to constantly be reinforcing myself with positive thoughts. Even when like I'm working out, I don't say, hey man, you got to push it. You got to push it. It's like, you can do this, man. You're stronger than you think. You can do this. Talking to yourself instead of listening to yourself is one of the most powerful things you can do, because when you listen to yourself, your mind is already programmed to keep you away from pain. So when you're in pain, it's telling you, hey, back off, don't do it.
Right.
If you talk to yourself, you can do this. I believe in you. You're stronger than you think. Those positive affirmations really mean a lot.
This is like a master class in positive thinking, in communication, in articulating.
Thank you.
These are very important things. Accountability is a very big deal to me.
Yeah.
Let's go into your sports history here, because I like to ask my guests in regards to if radio never happened to you, if you never decided to go down the radio media sales road industry, right?
Yeah.
What would you think Kevin LeGrett would be doing today? I think you probably would be a coach of a basketball team.
I would, man, growing up as a kid and admiring, even though I was on the East Coast, people like Pat Riley and the look, the communication, the motivation, that would be a dream. But, I was planning on going to law school and becoming a lawyer. My goal was to be an entertainment lawyer. When I graduated, it was the time of the Michael Ovitz, Michael Eisner brawl at Disney.
Oh, yeah.
But Ovitz was a guy that I always really admired because he had a huge stable of, great professional actors and performers that he was responsible for. I said, man, I'd love to do that. And I think that's one of the reasons to this day that I've always been really good with our talent, whether it's Bobby Bones, whether it's Woody, whether it's Ellen Kay, whether it's Brother Weeze, whether it's Matt Jones in Kentucky. I've always been really good with working with top end talent because I think my whole life I was thinking I was going to represent those people. Yeah. And it's funny, a few years ago I got a call out of the blue from an agency here in town in Los Angeles, and the gentleman was really interested in, hey, would you ever be interested in joining this side of the business, because I think you'd be really, really good at it. I've seen you work with X, Y, and Z, and maybe there's something there. And, I say this to people all the time, is that when you're young, you see the world with no blinders. You see the world wide open. I'm extending my arms as wide as they can go now. As you get older and you get more and more responsibility, you get a house, you get kids, you get a wife, you start worrying about, am I going to be able to pay my mortgage?
You're the president of iHeartMedia Sports.
Yeah, what happens when things change? So you worry about those things. And I sometimes challenge myself when I have those lonely moments and I say, should I make more bold decisions? Should I do things that are a little different? You could say I made a bold decision by accepting and coming out here to Los Angeles, but it's been one of the best decisions I ever made, You
made a bold decision coming on this podcast. I'll tell you that much, Kevin LeGrett.
This has been fun.
I got to tell you, I got to thank you again for doing this. This is a big deal to me. And it's a milestone marker of my episodes getting to the 50th episode. And I've stated on this podcast before, but I don't want to beat a dead horse, is that it is difficult to book guests, especially the bigger guests like yourself, the people that have more stature. In some ways, I feel like this peewee of a podcast is kind of beneath them. And that's okay. I just don't like when people tell me yes, and then they just turn out and ghost me or leave me on red. And listen, I know we all got things going on. We all have crosses to bear. The decent thing is to do respectfully pass. Yeah. You know what I mean? Just say you don't want to do it, because I can take it. Be like Nancy Reagan. Just say no.
Yeah.
And if not, there's no love lost. I asked Tony Sanchez to be on. He said no, he'd rather not. He doesn't like the way he sounds. Respect, Tony.
Wow.
Guy Goldschmidt, want to have you on. You talk a lot of good shit, Guy. Well, he doesn't want to be on either because he just doesn't want to be on the mic.
Oh my gosh, he would be great.
Right?
He would be great.
Thank you.
There's no one I love arguing with more than Guy Goldschmidt.
Everybody's favorite Republican, Guy Goldschmidt. I'm telling you.
But let me tell you this.
Go ahead.
This is one of the things I think it's a character thing. I think if someone tells you they're going to do something, you have to do it. I'll be frank with your listeners. I was supposed to be on Tuesday night. I had to move a dinner.
We rescheduled.
And we rescheduled right away. Yeah. I said, Hannah, I'm not going to leave him in a lurch. Please, Hannah's my assistant.
Oh, shout out to
Hannah
Hannah
do not
Miller.
Let this fall out.
Yes.
Fall out.
Real quick. Let's sidebar on the Hannah Miller thing. It's because of Hannah Miller and Sydney Novak that I'm sitting in this room with you right now. It's because of their Busy Babes podcast they started, and
shout out to Busy Babes.
Shout out to Busy Babes.
They need more followers.
Yeah, they're getting there. It's a slow process. It's hard. Because they started it. Ricardo from engineering hit me up because they wanted an intro, and he was kind of liaisoning for them. And I did the intro, and it brought us together as like fellow podcasters because I started my podcast. But because she's your executive assistant, I had her on my podcast before I had Sydney on.
That's great.
And I always tell them they're a big variable why I started this podcast. And because Hannah helped me book this pod session with you, I'm in tremendous debt to her. And I've invited them both back on to my podcast as Busy Babes because I had them on separately.
They're both great young women. Sydney's actually funny, and you'll laugh at this, but there are so many times that I've actually called Sydney because she's in my phone, and I've meant to call my daughter Sydney. My daughter's name's Sydney LeGrett.
Wow.
and Sydney always cracks up, and she's always cool. But because I have her number, because of a lot of the iHeart tentpole events, whether it's Wango Tango, whether it's the iHeartRadio Music Festival, the iHeart Awards, Sydney will be one of the people that I can call if I need something. Hey, I need a badge for this client. Hey, I need backstage access. And so I had her phone number. And it's funny, I've texted her a couple times, my daughter, hey, running 15 minutes late pickup. Then she's like, was this meant for me?
Yeah.
I'm like, I'm so sorry.
Wrong Sydney.
Exactly.
Right. I call her Sydney Collins because she reminds me of Lily Collins, the
that's
actress.
Great. That's
who
great.
Lily Collins is?
Yes, of course.
She's like a lighter, more pale version of Sydney Novak to me. So Sydney Collins, that's who she reminds me of. But you were saying, as far as rescheduling this episode, you had other obligations to tend to, but you still came through, Kev.
Of course.
And that means the world to me. Kevin, do you curse at all?
Yeah, of course.
Do you curse in here? Can you get it if in natural organic form? I'd like to hear you curse a little bit. We can drop the corporate. This is an open format. There's the podcast. Yeah, it's explicit.
I've had a couple of really good moments here where I've lost my shit. It's just a matter of when that moment comes.
Yes.
But you try not to, because the one thing I say to people all the time is that once you pass that point, it's hard to come back with people. And when you lose your cool, you create scars, and we all know scars are memories,
right,
and they last forever.
Right.
And I try to tell people all that all the time. Now that I'm an old wise Jedi master,
yes, you are.
I really try to hit people on the fact that if you're going to burn that bridge, realize there's no going back.
Right.
So
I've done that.
If you're going to burn that, but we all have.
Yeah.
We've all made mistakes. I mean, I've lost it on people, and I feel awful, but they never look at you the same. And you have to understand that, and you have to kind of catch yourself. But yeah, when we're chopping it up, I got no problem swearing. I try to be really smart when you're in this building.
Right.
Obviously you got to have a certain way that you conduct yourself.
Corporate professionalism that needs to be maintained at all times. But like you said, you've lost it. And I think that also plays into your Rochester, New York, because East Coast folks are different than West Coast.
No question.
You got to admit, West Coast folks are a little sensitive.
Very
especially
sensitive.
Nowadays.
Very sensitive.
New York people, they have to endure, not just New York, but the entire East Coast. They have to endure pretty harsh winters. That's like another planet cold.
Correct.
Okay? Here, if it drops below 70, everybody's like complaining about...
I was at the Dodger game last night complaining it was 62.
Yeah.
I said I was cold. My friend gave me his actual zip-up that he gave away at the front desk, and I wore it. I wore it home. I was freezing.
Yeah, it gets cold at Dodger Stadium, though, because you're getting that breeze.
61, bro.
Right. And we got a cold front happening. When this podcast is being recorded, there's a cold front happening. I walked over here in a beanie and a double jacket. And I know it's not even that cold, but I'm skinny as a wafer over here, Kevin LeGrett.
Exactly.
But there is a difference in the East-West Coast vibe.
The toughness. There's no question about it. East Coast, you're used to people cussing at you, and it's quicker. Out here, people are without a doubt sensitive. It's part of the way you were raised, and I think you hit it a lot. On the East Coast, you're a little bit, in some ways, tougher because you have to deal with the world. Really 6-7 months of just pure cold and pure toughness,
and subways.
It's not fun.
And
subways
people doing crazy shit on subways. It's a wild. I'm telling you, the East Coast is a different planet to me. Yeah. Even though it's part of the same country, it's an entirely different mindset of people that are just tougher. Period. That's all. They're just like they're made of leather.
They may be tougher, but I will say this. I always tell the people the things I love about California and the things I love about Los Angeles is, number one, the weather. It's ridiculous. We talked about
we're
the sun.
spoiled.
It's unbelievable.
Yeah.
The opportunity.
Yeah.
You can be whoever you want out here. There's so many opportunities. You can be working for a movie studio. You can work for how many professional sports teams do we have? Some of the big media companies are out here. Disney, iHeartMedia, etc., Netflix. They're all out here. Yeah. And there's so many different opportunities. And then lastly, when you think about the opportunities, it's really the people. I think the people out here are fantastic. I enjoy them. They're welcoming. There's so many transplants that when I came out here in 2015, and I was out here for a year, actually 13 months by myself, I felt like people really embraced me and they were cool. It wasn't like we were like boys, we were best friends, but we were able to develop that. But I also say to everybody, the three toughest things are the fact that the taxes suck, the traffic is ridiculous, and then thirdly, and a lot of people don't think about this, when your corporate office is in the East Coast, every day you run the race uphill. Because even if you get up at 5 o'clock in the morning, that's 8 o'clock on the East Coast. Most people on the East Coast start their day 6:37. They start earlier than they do on the West Coast.
Which is 3 o'clock here. Yeah.
It is real. So there have been times like you already know, you've seen my office, you know I'm kind of anal. I like things organized.
Right.
And there are nights I'll drive my wife crazy because I'll be sitting on the couch and I'll empty out my email box. It's empty.
I'm the same way though. I don't like the red flags of notifications waiting. I hate that.
But you wake up in the morning at 5 o'clock. I get up between 5 and 5:30 every day. 100 emails.
For sure, especially here at iHeart, I'm getting 100 emails in an hour, regardless, from PPO, all that.
My heart starts going.
Yeah, me too. Do you wake up like an impending doom? Do you feel like, do you wake up and worry when you open your phone that some bad news is going to happen? Not bad as in like detrimental and everything's going to shit. It's just more of like, you may have forgotten to get back to somebody or something like that. I always feel every time I wake up, I go to check my phone and I'm just waiting for that message from Big, like the phone tap was cut wrong or something. Something. It doesn't happen. Not a lot.
I'm the exact same way. And I will tell you, for your listeners, the best advice that people give you nowadays is do not look at your phone the first hour that you wake. I can't do it. I wake up, I grab my phone, I put on my Apple Watch.
Yeah.
You know, I go to the bathroom, I get out of the bath, I'm immediately on that phone. I go through all those emails just so I can find out where the problem points are.
Yeah.
Then I usually jump on my Peloton. Then I take a quick shower, and then I'm off and to iHeart. I here in Burbank. I live out in Santa Clarita, so I do that commute.
Wow.
And on the way from Santa Clarita, I'm usually on the phone doing 2 or 3 calls, checking in on stuff, trying to make some stuff happen.
While you're driving.
Well, I'm driving, yeah, of course.
But you do it like, hands free, right?
Of course. It's all set up. That's actually really great. And if I struggle with that, I can always pull my wife or my youngest son, Logan, in, and they can figure out how to get it set up for me.
Or your Sydney, right?
My Sydney is great.
Well, I mean, your daughter, Sydney, not our iHeart Sydney.
My daughter, Sydney, yes.
Right. Kevin LeGrett, you really just touched on a lot there. I mean, it's fascinating to hear it from you. Like all these words of wisdom. Speaking of words of wisdom.
Well, going back to that real quick, let me just say one thing. Understand that when I talk about the fact that you're running the race uphill, all of us have one ultimate enemy, and we need to understand what that enemy is. Okay. And it's time. No one is ever going to beat time. We just don't have enough time. And when you think about it, when both of my parents have passed, and I go through sometimes in my head thinking about both of them when they were in bed, and they were getting ready to go to the other side.
Right.
The fact that both of them, that's all they wanted was more time. It's one of the reasons why I always try to be very smart with my time, because it's the ultimate enemy. If you do not use your time correctly, your time on this earth is very, very quick. My wife sent me something the other day, and it said, when you think about the course of your life, there's really only 4,000 weeks that you're going to live. Wow. Like, are you making the most out of those 4,000 weeks? Got to ask yourself that.
It seems like it's longer.
Well, that's why, I'm a big radio guy. I'm a big audio guy. But when I get in my car at night, people don't realize I don't turn on the radio. I pull out of the garage, and probably the first 5-10 minutes before I get on the 5, I reflect upon my day, and I reflect upon, did I really contribute today, number one? And number two, I have a phrase, and you've heard me say this, win the day. Did you win the day? And by winning the day, can you point to 3 or 4 things that you actually accomplished that are making you better or making your organization better? We can all sit back and say, where did I screw up today? And we can knock out, 5, 6, 7, 8 things. But did you win the day? At the end of the day, can you say, I had a successful day? And I try to do that to myself on a daily basis. And then I can go off and listen to Reel and listen to, my music and do whatever I want to do as I get home, because I'm trying to decompress and just get away from everything. It drives my wife crazy, because when I get home, I don't want to talk about my day. My wife will say, hey, what happened today? I go, nothing.
You don't talk about it at all?
I don't want to.
You never take your work totally home with you?
I bring my work home with me, meaning I'm thinking about it, meaning I will absolutely open up the laptop and do work at my kitchen table or throughout my house.
But you don't discuss it?
I don't want to discuss it. I don't want to relive it again. I already lived it once.
And that irritates wifey.
Oh, because she wants to know what's going on.
And do you ever divulge? She's probably going to get a lot of information from from episode.
I'll tell her some things. And sometimes I tell her things like a week later, and she, cusses me out. Like, what the?
That is wild, man, that you're able to, because I can't really bottle it up. Let me just quickly go back to the blowing up bridges and not being able to come back from it. I've done that a few times in my radio career. Right?
I might have heard of a couple of those in the building.
That's how you knew who I was. Exactly. Well, I knew it. And let me just apologize for all those incidences, because I take my job very seriously. I'm very passionate, and I'm Mexican Italian. Okay. So I talk with my hands, and I curse a lot, but I'm not cursing at people. I'm not like cursing them down. I'm just like, what? You got to tell me you want the fucking music bed in there first. Don't wait till I produce 10 of these spots and then you tell me later the client wanted a music bed. Now I got to go back. That's kind of where I get frustrated at.
And you're frustrated because they wasted your time.
And there's no communication.
Time is the ultimate enemy. Keep going. I'm sorry.
No. Please cut me off anytime. I'm always interested in what you got to say here, Kevin LeGrett. In doing so and growing, because I'm 46 years old now.
You look really good for 46.
Thank you so much. As do you. I don't know how old you are, but it's none of my business. I just know that you're older than me.
Double nickels now, baby.
Really?
Double nickels.
No shit. You're 55.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
You could say it.
I mean, that's pretty dope, though, man. I mean, you really do. You got your hairline.
I'm shocked. I never thought I would be this old. I mean, it honestly, it's actually really crazy. I never in my life thought I would be this old.
You never make it to 55?
I'd never make it to 55. I never did. You know, as a kid growing up, you know, a lot of the men on my side of the family die very young. And I always said to myself, if I make it to 50, I'll feel really good. It sounds so stupid now because I've always worked out. I've always tried to be in at least halfway decent shape. Right. I could be in better shape. Let me tell you.
Same.
I beat myself up about that. But, you know, to be this old now, I never really thought it. So part of what I try to do, and that's why when you asked me to be on the podcast, I said absolutely, because I think it's important that you help other people. Like, you have a gift, you care. Caring is a really important thing, but you've got to take your energy and channel it in the right ways.
That's what I'm learning.
Because if you don't channel in the right ways, then it becomes, your caring becomes a weakness. Yes. And you can't have that happen to you.
Yeah, that's why I've been able to grow and learn from those. Plus, I don't drink anymore, Kevin LeGrett. Okay, it's been over 3 years. That also weighed into my irritability. Okay, you know, I used to party a lot. I had to DJ clubs, a lot of free party favors, a lot of free nose candy.
Exactly.
You know, I'm not afraid to admit it because it got me to where I'm at. In a sense, it hindered me. It was detrimental to my health physically, but it also opened up a lot of new neural pathways that make me think of crazy shit that eventually manifests into real world work for Big Boy, for production, whatnot. It's like that creative edge. But
that manifestation that you talk about, that's language creates the reality you live in. And it's how you're communicating with yourself. Right. You were frustrated, you were tired because of the lifestyle you were living, and you knew that you wanted to be doing other things. Right. And then when someone wastes your time, it's an explosion, it's an eruption.
Yeah. I'm trying to get that under control. I'm interested in going to therapy, but I'm also a little worried about going to therapy because once you unlock, Joyner Lucas was just on Big Boy Show, and he said something very smart. I'm not saying I totally agree, but I know where he's coming from. I get the perspective. He said, I'm afraid to go into therapy. Not afraid. I don't want to go into therapy, he said, because I don't want to open that door to what could be behind it. And in his mind, all of his traumas, all his pain is closeted up, put away in his storage unit. And when you go to therapy, you take a look underneath the psychological hood at the wiring, and you may not like what you see and what you uncover, what your revelation is, breakthroughs and whatnot. I want to do it just because I want to get my temper, my emotional, passionate reactions under control. As John Peake would say, don't react, respond. Yeah. Right? Another Jedi master.
It's a great line.
Yeah. I call him Dad, by the way. Yeah. But just side note, you're 55. You have a much more Jedi, wiser. It's like you've been here before, Kevin LeGrett. It's like, do you believe in that? Do you feel like you have an old soul? Because, man,
I have an old soul only because I've had a thirst for learning my whole life. I've had a thirst for reading. I probably read more than the common person. Read books constantly on the internet, reading different articles, trying to get better, to understand things better, and more importantly, to be able to teach better. You and I were talking before we started the podcast. I coached basketball for a really long time,
right?
And I really enjoyed coaching young men. And what I enjoyed the most was I always believed that if I could get young men from 14 to 18, usually from 8th grade to the graduate from high school, to do things and to think as a team instead of as an individual, I could easily do that in the workplace,
right?
Because there's so many distractions. There's girls, there's hormones, there's bullying, there's growth and feeling like you don't belong and all of that. And I always prided myself on that. And I always found a way with the 11 to 15 young men that I was coaching, found a way to connect with each one of them individually. And I've always tried to do that in the workplace as well. And I think it's really important that you can communicate to people in a clear, concise manner, but more importantly, be able to communicate with them through different octanes. There's times when I'm going to talk to you very softly. There's times I'm going to pull you aside and whisper in your ear. There's times I'm going to lay into you. There's times I'm going to give you an ass whooping.
Like a coach.
Exactly.
Coach
and
LeGrett.
that's what was the best thing about it. And I do that in my professional life too.
Yeah.
Because I think it's
here.
so important. Absolutely.
Right. I mean, you are pretty reserved. You're soft-spoken right now. But just like me, I know you can rev up, get ramped up when things are infuriating, when people aren't accountable.
Well, again, I will say this to you. Like,
go ahead.
I believe my wife and I were just having this conversation the other day on the couch, and I actually got mad at her. So I'll tell you that.
Okay.
So I was talking about coaching.
Yeah.
And like what I remember coaching is I remember doing some great strategic things that put our teams in positions to win, and the kids being able to overcome obstacles that put us in those positions to win, and doing stuff that they didn't think they were capable of doing. My wife remembers me just being a crazy guy about a call, or a crazy guy about yelling at a kid, or this and that. That's where, like, I've learned you've got to really think before you burn that bridge. I think of myself kind of like Pat Riley on the sidelines. Smooth, calm, said things to referees I needed to say, never got thrown out of a game, never. I must have coached 500 to 1,000 games, never got thrown. Got a couple technicals,
right,
but I knew when to pull it back.
You never got like Bobby Knight,
no,
right?
No. It's funny. I heard a guy I played AAU basketball with. His name is Christian Leitner, who I think is one of the greatest basketball players of all time.
I know what you're talking about.
And I heard him on an interview with Dan Patrick last week. And that's another thing I do is I listen to a lot of interviews because I think it gives me a different perspective. But Christian talked about the fact he coaches now, and his third or fourth game he got thrown out. And I'm like, man, you're Christian Leitner. You cannot get thrown out. Everybody knows who you are. You're lucky that didn't end up on social. You're lucky that didn't get posted in 12 different spots, this and that. I always was concerned about that. I didn't want to be that guy. But again, think about perspective.
Right.
I think about the times that we were able to come up with plays at the end of the game that won games. I think about times that we were able to change defenses and shut somebody down. My wife thinks about me ranting and raving.
Really? So that's what sticks the most.
Well, I think what you need to do is you need to understand for every action, there's a reaction. Yep. And when I was younger, I didn't do that as much. And it's one of the reasons why I feel like I've calmed down. It's one of the reasons why I feel like I'm more amenable to different outside ideas. It doesn't have to be my way or the highway. And I think that you'll get there.
I'm trying.
I think it takes you time. Yeah. And I always try to put myself in the role of the person across from me that may be not hearing me clearly. I had a conversation this morning that I had to say to somebody, hey man, this is your job. I don't need you giving me more work. Like, I'm busy enough.
Thank you.
I need you doing your job. If you do your job, then I can be successful. And I looked at the person and I said, I know you're mad at me right now. And I'm not trying to make you mad at me. I'm trying to communicate with you.
But you said it in person, right? See,
I said it over Teams.
Over Teams.
Yeah.
See, that's the other thing. Communicating a lot over Teams, things could be taken out of context. They put tones behind it that aren't there, or vice versa, or reverse, whatever. It's better to communicate just like how we're having now, even if it even if it comes to kind of like a discourse where there's not an argument, but a disagreement, right? Yeah. And I've had plenty of those, but I like to at least express how I'm feeling about my side of the perspective on a phone call or in person, because you can see the look in my eyes that I'm not coming at you mean or trying to be, coming at you like Coach LeGrett. Yeah. It's just more of like, hey, I need you to accomplish this so that I can move on to this. I tell people all the time, listen to the message, not the tone. Yeah, there's no question. Listen to the message, not the tone. And it's really important. Communication at its fundamental is key to every relationship. I agree. It's one of the reasons why when we were going through COVID, I wrote a note to the staff every single business night. I remember that. And it used to I would be home and my wife would say to me, "What are you doing?" And I'm like, I'm writing a note to the staff. She goes, what can you possibly be writing about? I go, I'm just giving them a quick update. I got to keep the team together. My whole thing during COVID, and this might sound crazy, it might sound like I'm a lunatic, but I wanted to keep the team together. And what was amazing is that
The first 30 days, everyone was calling me. Everyone was texting me. They want to get back in the office. When can I come back in the office? When can I come back? This isn't good. I don't know how to do this.
Yeah.
After 30 days, people are like, I ain't coming back.
I'm not coming back.
And you know better than anyone, like, I went from being the most loved guy in Burbank by the iHeart staff to one of the most hated guys when I made people start coming back in the office.
And that is an important thing, though, because you have to get people back. You have to wrangle the troops back together. But in doing so, they had to adapt to this working from home lifestyle. I know a few of them that weren't. I didn't like it, but I've worked from home most of my career because working on audio doesn't require you to be in the station. But salespeople, account executives, I should say, rather, they rely on that office vibe. They're all sitting next to each other, like in that show Billions. Yeah. Where like they're all their desks are right connected to each other.
Great show, by the way.
It's a great show. That's what the sales team reminds me of. They're billions. Yeah. But how did you get them to come back?
Well, I was in charge. I could tell. Tell them to come back. I mean, I had to end up telling people to come back. Right. I had to have some difficult conversations with people. I mean, it's still very hard.
Were they reluctant? Like they didn't want to do it at all?
They didn't want to come back. No.
Really?
Especially, there's a lot of staff that never wanted to come back, and it's the hardest thing. Like I never went to the side of all of our work can be done by home, and I was actually on the opposite side of a lot of senior leaders in our company because I never believed in it. And that's one of the reasons why I came in every day. Right. I just didn't believe that I was that productive, and I just knew. I know human nature, and I know no matter what people say to me, they're just not that disciplined the way they are in the office. And you can talk about the fact, you're sitting at your desk or your cube and you're looking at pet videos all day, this and that. Well, hopefully the manager sees that and does it. But it's one thing if you do it in the office and the manager is not smart enough or engaged enough to reprimand you for that. Right. It's another thing when you're home and all of a sudden you blow an hour and a half, 2 hours watching YouTube videos. And I can tell you, I've had some really interesting conversations. I had a sales rep in Houston, Texas, who I'm very close with. I think she's great. When I used to have the Houston market, she's won the President Club Award several times. We had this conversation one day when she was trying to explain to me and sell me. And I'm a salesperson, so I'm hard to sell. But she was selling me on how she's more effective from home. And she walked me through this sketch. Listen to this. She said, I get up at 6 o'clock in the morning, and I return all my emails between 6 and 7:15. At 7:15, I shut it down. I get my kids ready for school. I make them lunches. I drive them to school. I drop them off before 9 o'clock. Then I go to the gym and work out. And then when I'm done working out at the gym, I come home. I usually do a couple things, and I'm back online, Kevin, by 10:15. And I'm online straight from 10:15 till 2 o'clock. And then I go and pick up my kids. And then I come home. I help them with their homework. I make dinner. I have dinner with my family. And then I'm back online again, Kevin, around 7:30 or 8. And I may stay online until 10 o'clock at night. And I go, you really think that's productive? I go, when the rest of the staff and the rest of your clients are really working like 8 to 5, you have gigantic gaps in there.
Right.
And
they're being mom and whatnot.
People were getting caught up in, again, the importance of time versus the importance of being productive. And I think the great thing about COVID is it's allowed us to have more flexibility. And I'm all for flexibility. I think it's really hard to be a mom and a working mom. I think it's really hard to have kids and work and try to balance all of that. I'm very, very understanding of that. But what I don't understand is how you've made a commitment to this being your job. And there are times, especially when things aren't going the way that you want them to, going back to our initial part of our podcast today about working hard, that when things aren't going great, you got to dig in, you got to work hard.
Yeah.
And it may mean you have to work more hours.
Harder.
Exactly.
You got to dig into the trenches. Totally. And I work from home, but I live across the street from iHeartMedia, Kevin. I did that by design. Okay. So in a way, I am very productive from home, being an audio producer, right? There's no distractions. There's no people coming in. Hey, what's up, Sketch? Exactly. And I love that office camaraderie.
So do I.
Right? I love when Wacko comes in or he just peeks his head through the window and he's just staring at you with his poker face. There's something, and then we bounce ideas off each other. There's something special about that.
To me, it's the same thing as when I played basketball in high school and college and played football and the whole bit. I love the locker room. And people are saying, well, Kevin loved the locker room. What's wrong with this dude? I know.
Pause.
Exactly. I love the locker room because I loved busting chops. Right. I love sitting outside my stall, my locker stall, and just talking to guys, whether it's talking about their girlfriends, whether it was talking about where the party is tonight, whether it's talking about Michael Jordan or Magic Johnson, the era that I grew up in. I just miss those times. I always miss that moment more than I did even the games, than I did even the road trips. It was just that daily grind in the locker room. When our season used to end, I never cleaned out my locker. I would never clean out my locker. When we were doing off-season workouts, I would go in the locker room and use the locker. And then a lot of my teammates started doing that. Why? Because it kind of became our sanctuary.
Right.
My roommate was a guy named Wakili Moore, great player. But, Wakili would just, follow the lead and be like, you know what, dude, I love this. I love being part of a team, and this is what it's all about. And that's why I always go out of my way, whether it was always doing staff meetings here, bringing the team together, because I think it's important for communication. Because to be successful at anything, you need to have the right strategy, the right people, and then most importantly, the right culture. And each one balances the other out if you're constantly challenging yourself in, is my strategy correct? Right. Do I really have the right people?
Right.
Do I really have the right culture? How am I fostering the right culture? And those are the things that I do to myself all the time when I talk about driving home without the radio on or making phone calls immediately, is I'm challenging myself is, am I doing what I need to do consistently? That's why the role I'm in right now is a little different. Because I'm kind of
sports president of iHeartMedia Sports, right?
I'm the president of iHeartMedia Sports, and I'm the president of iHeart Political Sales and Strategy, and I really don't have a team. It's the first time since, probably I was 8 or 9 years old that I'm not on a team. I'm really my lone wolf. I'm my own guy.
You have Hannah.
I have Hannah, but she also works with Greg Ashlock. She also works on our big influencer network that's getting bigger and bigger every week. So there's a lot that's going on there, but it challenges you to think a little differently. And I find myself this year challenging myself to approach things in a different way so I can continue to learn, because I believe that if you're a lifelong learner, you're always going to be young at heart. And that's what I've always tried to be.
Man, these are just great slogans. You're dropping just gems of knowledge, Kevin LeGrett.
Thank you.
I can't wait till you hear this back. Speaking of which, when was the last time you did a podcast, when you were a guest on a podcast?
There's a gentleman named Dom Yeager. He's an author. He's done a bunch of books. I think it was the last podcast I was on probably 2 years ago.
Okay, so it's not often. Right?
No,
this is a rare event.
It's funny.
This is like the eclipse.
My wife and I talked about this quite a bit during COVID. I was going to start doing a podcast, and I was going to start doing a podcast called Chopping It Up with Kev. And I was going to do it each week. And initially, I was going to start with our personalities, and I was going to get the story behind Big Boy, the story behind Bill Handel.
My podcast.
Exactly. I was going to do that. And then I was going to start doing the business owners and bringing in Scott Cooper from MJA, bring in Bob Pittman and do an interview with him, etc. And then when Bob came out with Mathematics, I didn't want to seem like I was biting off of him and trying to just follow the leader.
Right.
And I kept putting on the back burner. My daughter Sydney said to me probably about Christmas this past year, she said, well, I thought you were going to come out that podcast.
Yeah.
Because I was also thinking about my network of people. Over the years, I've really become close with some great people. My high school basketball coach is a guy named Jeff Van Gundy. Jeff Van Gundy was with the New York Knicks.
I know who you're talking about. That was your high school basketball coach?
My high school basketball coach.
Get out of here.
Yeah. So somebody that I would have on the podcast, guys like Christian Leitner, I'd have him on the podcast. People I've developed really close relationships with, like Bobby Bones, people like Colin Coward, Dan Patrick. I just thought it could be really good.
I mean, you should do it, and I'd help you produce it, Kevin LeGrett.
Oh, man, I love that.
I mean, you're talking about the glue. You're looking at the crazy glue here.
I like glue.
I'm like Sketchword Scissorhands over here. Okay, I could chop it up for you. Chopping it up with Kev. Come on, man.
Exactly.
I got you on that.
I love it.
I help Busy Babes. I'm helping Letty with her new podcast, the Taylor Talk podcast department.
Nice.
Speaking of which, let's switch gears. Thoughts on Taylor Swift and Beyonce? Okay. Are you a Swiftie? Are you a Beyonce lover?
So let me just be as direct as I can be.
Go ahead.
Both women are unbelievable.
Thank you.
Oh, wow. Can't believe it.
Unreal. They're like aliens.
Aliens.
Right?
The power behind both of them. But I got to say, Ronnie and I argue about this all the time.
Ronnie, who works here, Ronnie?
Yeah, exactly.
Shout out to Ronnie.
Yeah, that's my dude. I love that kid. His old boss in Orlando called me and said, hey, you really need to take a look at him. Make sure that you look after him when he comes out, because he's like a son to me. I always was on him, making sure that he was good. And he's carved his own path. I'm very proud of him.
He's producing like 15 podcasts himself. I thought I was doing a lot.
Is Ronnie doing
he's doing
besides all the social and everything he does?
He's juggling like chainsaws, but his chainsaws are podcasts. Wow, I mean, it's unreal. When he said 14 the other day, and I was like, whoa.
Yeah.
And then he said 15 when I saw him again. I'm like, bro, you're going to be up to 20 by the end of this conversation.
Wow.
So I can't complain about anything. You talk about outworking people. Ronnie outworks. He's like an Energizer bunny.
Totally.
But go ahead, please.
He and Wacko both bring it. But here's what I would say.
Yeah.
I'm 100% a Swiftie. Yeah. I went to 2 of her concerts. I was absolutely mesmerized, blown away, stunned. 3 hours plus at SoFi. Right. It flowed. I was like, you have to be kidding. I made both my sons come with me the second night.
Were they reluctant?
Totally. My oldest son is in the hip hop business, works at Create Music Group. Shout out to Kevin LeGrett, does a great job, has moved up, very proud of him.
Shout out to Carl.
He's done great things. But he didn't want to go. My youngest son is a sophomore at Indiana University, Logan LeGrett, and does great stuff too. But he was kind of like, really? And we all went as a family, and I'm telling you, they were blown away. She is ridiculous. That's one of the great things of last summer was watching Stephen A. Smith, from ESPN.
Yes, of
course. He took his daughters to it.
He talked about it on Howard Stern.
And he could not, I got to listen to that interview.
Oh my God.
Interview must be really good.
It was intense. He was given, same thing with David Letterman. He wasn't on Stern, but David Letterman was talking about Taylor Swift being like this beacon of good and hope in a kind of a dismal world at the moment, you know?
I will tell you, I've not watched the whole thing on Disney, but I've started it 2 or 3 times.
Same.
Because I enjoyed it so
I watched it all the way through 2 or 3 times.
Oh,
I just have it on, but I'll just have it on in the background.
Yeah, it's great in the background. I love that. I do it too. Like tonight, I'll probably go home.
Yeah.
Open my laptop, have about 200 emails I need to return, and something like that in the background is great.
I love it. I like when she goes at the beginning. She's like, "Oh, hi."
Yeah.
And
I'm Taylor.
Oh my God. I can't tell you. I love that woman. It's just like there's something so special about her.
Oh, there's no question. Something's very, very special. I wouldn't go as far as like I love her and this and that, but I think that she's truly amazing. I think that she's charted her own course and stayed true to herself.
Well,
and that's
love
the
her
most
talent. How about
love
that?
her talent.
Love her talent.
And it's going to be interesting to see what happens next this month. She comes out with a new album.
And that's the Tortured Poets Department.
Yeah.
I went to go see Beyonce's movie Renaissance, right? Great. Excellent. They're equal. They both balance each other out as far as greatest female lead performers in this country right now. I mean, Beyonce's been on top of the game forever, but the Eras Tour really put Taylor Swift and catapulted her to a whole different stratosphere.
Well, Ronnie got interviewed this week by Ryan Seacrest, and he believes that Beyonce goes to a whole nother level because the next phase of her, she's going to come out with a rock album. Oh. So she's obviously done hip hop. She's obviously done pop.
Now country. Right.
The next thing is going to, and he says that there's a lot of clues. It's she's riding a red horse. It has black on. This, wow. I was listening partially to it, but I go, that's my boy Ronnie making some waves.
That could be a badass rock album. I mean, she's just a badass artist, period. And then I also have a fantasy of Dr. Dre teaming up with Taylor Swift. He creates a beat and she kind of raps over it because Taylor kind of raps in her sing-songy way, but there's times where I'm like, dude, she's rapping.
Yeah,
it's not that she's like straight up rapping, like the structure or even like the mumble rap, but she'll rap poetry. Yeah. And I'm like, dude, that's rap right there. There's no question about it. Why not? I just would like to see. That's just one of my fantasies. And my other fantasy is possibly getting hit up by one of her people from her camp. And they're like, Sketch, we hear you make intros. We're interested in hearing some of your
that would
work.
be huge.
Could you imagine?
That would be
I'd be
huge.
like, I'm going to go ahead and die right now. I'll make the intro first, and then I'll pass away
That's
after.
Awesome.
Yeah, I mean, listen, Kevin LeGrett. Let me just check. Okay, we're a little over an hour. Can I just go a little longer with you? Is that okay? Sure. I know you got to get home and debrief your mind, decompress and whatnot, but just a couple more. I didn't even really get to any of these because we got into a whole different conversation and just it went a different direction, but I'm thankful for it because I didn't really know about the basketball background.
This has been fun.
It's really fascinating to learn your real love for basketball. What's your favorite basketball team, by the way?
Growing up as a kid, it was always the Lakers and the New York Knicks. Yeah. Down deep, I will never lose that New York Knicks thing, primarily because my high school coach ended up being the head coach of the Knicks.
Right.
And Pat Riley ended up going to the Knicks. And I was from New York. I was there in the 90s when those teams were really good. I was fortunate enough because of Coach Van Gundy that I got to go to a lot of those games. And it was really neat watching Patrick Ewing and John Starks and Anthony Mason and Charles Oakley play. I could just recite it.
God, you're such a basketball head, man.
Oh, I love it.
That is
just
wild.
love it. Yeah,
I didn't know that about you.
But what I love about the game is I actually love the strategy behind it. I love the chess games. My youngest son, Logan, will laugh because I say this all the time, but I love watching women's basketball. And one of the reasons I love watching women's basketball is you can see plays develop. Yeah. Where the men's game has become so much about how fast, strong, and how quickly you can start and stop.
Right.
The women's game, they're not as physically imposing, so you're still running sets, and I think it's really cool to watch how sets are performing. Right. I'm a geek, so I'll sit there sometimes and I'll see an out of bounds play, and I'll grab my legal pad and I'll draw the out of bounds play, and I'm like, damn, if I ever coach again, that's something I want to run.
I think you want to get back into coaching, man.
No, I'm too old, man. I'm too old now.
But that's the best kind of coaches, the ones that you look like you have a Pat Riley vibe about you. I could see you with like more of like the greased up hair. Put on that tie.
Tell that to everybody because they say I have too much gel in my hair now, and the gel comes out.
It looks like you just got a nice amount of tres flores in your hair. You know what I mean? That. But it's not
whatever that means. It sounds really good.
Tres flores is what we used to put when I was like in middle school, high school. We used to put when I actually had hair and my hair game was strong. I used to put tres flores, which is just like it's like a hair wax sort of, but it was called tres flores. It was a very Latino thing back in the 90s and whatnot. But you seem like there is a burning desire inside Kevin LeGrett to coach again. And I think you should do that, even if it's just your passion, a hobby, because obviously you're the president. You're a 2-term president prior to that. Now president of iHeartMedia Sports, political, what you had said. I can't remember all the technical terms you mentioned to me, Kevin LeGrett, but I mean, that's your corporate Kevin LeGrett world. Yeah. But then there's that deep burning desire about basketball and coaching and how you were able to implement the coaching thought process into your corporate world. And you were able to marry the two, and you're still using it till today, even with the emails during COVID. I remember reading, I always thought somebody's writing these for him.
No.
But that was you.
And I didn't even know how to use like ChatGPT or Bing AI or any of that stuff. In fact, I wish I had. It would have made my life a lot easier. But no, I would say this. I would say, besides my wife and my children, I'm most proud of the fact that I was able to take a ragtag team of young men in Rochester, New York, and play AAU basketball across the country, take them to, at one point we were ranked 16th, 17th in the nation, and we didn't really have a great superstar. We had a couple kids that played Division I. We didn't have any real superstars. We were a team. And those kids put their egos at the door. They all had different backgrounds. They all came from different parts of Rochester. And we were able to do some really, really great things. And, when I look back, and I think, when I'm taking my dying breaths, that will be one of the things that will make me smile, is that we were able to do that because so many people didn't think there's a chance we could do it. You guys are just a local team. You guys are just this. You guys, you were
the underdog.
Yeah. You're not really a high school coach. You're not really a college coach. So you're not going to be able to do this. And I'll be like, okay. I'm going to outwork you. And my wife will tell you, like, I would come home from practice, I'd go in my office, because in Rochester I had an office in my house, and I would go in my office and I'd be working on stuff for the game plan. And people thought I was crazy, I was putting in too much time, but it was all about, if I'm going to do something, I'm going to do it 100%. Right. There's no 110, there's no 120, it's 100%. That's the top of the gauge. If you try to fill up your gas tank more than it's full, it drips off. Your
cuppeth overfloweth.
I always watch people do that, and I say, damn, that man has too much money, because I ain't spilling that gas.
Hey, man, I say that this podcast is 20% me and 90% guest, which is 110%. Exactly. Because that's how much I put into this. Even if it overflows and there could possibly be flammable liquid pouring out, that's how much I care about this. Not just this podcast, but in production in general. Yeah. I'm very perfectionist like that. Little things bother me and stuff. But I apply what you said, and I even apply what I learned from coaches as well. When I hear Phil Jackson talking, or when I hear Derek Fisher, who's now a coach of a women's of WNBA. Okay. The Sparks, right? I think he's still. Is he still coaching?
I think he was with the Sparks. I don't think he is.
He's not anymore. But during his tenure,
yeah, he was good.
That's somebody who I actually knew and met back at our days at Power, right?
He also coached the Knicks.
That's right. Oh, that's right. Then he came back. See, he's older now. He has all this knowledge. And I feel like basketball coaches are more than just coaches. They're mentors. They're like father figures. And mother figures, for the female basketball coaches.
I've been gone now 10 years, and it warms my heart when my players reach out to me at Christmas, at Easter. They reach out to me and tell me that they're engaged now, or that they had a baby and things like that. And it's crazy that this is happening in life. It goes back to the point we talked about a little while ago about, being double nickels and saying to yourself, I never thought I would be this old. Right. I never thought I'd live this long.
I know. I shouldn't even be alive right now, Kevin LeGrett. Exactly. I'll tell you that much. All the shit I did.
You got a lot of road tread on you, baby.
Somebody's looking out.
Exactly.
Somebody's looking out for me.
So now what you need to do is you need to say, if someone looked out for me,
right, pay it forward,
gave me the opportunity, not just pay it forward, but I got this wonderful opportunity. What am I doing every day to make an impact? What am I doing every day to challenge myself to get better, both as a person, as a friend, as a colleague, as a professional? What am I doing to make myself better? It's like this, everybody wakes up in the morning. Last thing I wanted to do this morning was jump on my Peloton. But I'm like, dude, you got to get on the Peloton. Right. You need to. And then I start saying positive affirmations to myself. Again, it goes down to, are you listening to yourself or are you talking to yourself?
Let me tell you, Kevin LeGrett, in regards to the rebuilding of blown up bridges, and me growing as a person, and what you just said is, are you challenging yourself as a human, as a colleague, as a coworker? Well, some of the folks that, I may have gotten a little too passionate about with, I went ahead and sent them emails apologizing for my part of it. Yeah. Now time had passed, so some of them got over it, some didn't. But I still continue to put forth the same amount of effort for every project, no matter who it is, no matter what kind of relationship I have with them in office or not. I still have to show up.
That will come back to you.
Right.
It always does. I always say to people, if you remember Indiana Jones, I never watched the movie, but I've seen the previews.
Right.
So they take this like leather rope or something, they throw it across a canyon,
right,
and they walk across it like a leather bridge, and they're like rocking back and forth like they're about to fall.
Yeah.
Take that image, because that's what relationships are.
That's what pretty much a lot of my relationships are.
And now, because you're taking the step of saying, I'm sorry, when you know you made a mistake.
Right.
Or you're going the extra mile to say, hey, let's meet halfway on this.
Right.
Those will come back to you.
Yeah.
Those will come back to you.
It's rough. Sometimes you have to acknowledge your wrongdoing, and I don't have a problem with it, because that's the other part of accountability that I was talking about. There was an old saying in my day that said, my bad. Remember my bad?
Oh, of course.
Nobody really says that anymore. People aren't willing to take accountability, not just here, but across everywhere. It seems like it's just a trend. It's like a mind virus that people just don't want to go, hey man, my bad. Or, it's always somebody else's fault or another excuse. And that's the part that I was taught vigorously growing up. Don't do that. The things that are happening now in today's society and way of thinking seems to be all the things that I was told not to do. Yeah. You see?
Well, don't change.
I'm trying not to.
Don't let it change, but also remember this. Mm-hmm. COVID did some really bad stuff to society, and it did some really bad stuff to understanding relationships. Mm-hmm. And always think about obstacles create the hero. No matter what. Think about Luke Skywalker in Star Wars. Mm-hmm. We all had to have obstacles.
Right.
Every great movie, Oppenheimer, you have to have an obstacle that you overcome.
An arc.
You got
It's an arc, right? I consider myself the Oppenheimer of fucking audio, okay?
I love it.
The rest of my life, personally, is one giant dumpster fire, Kevin LeGrett.
You're going to fix that.
But when it comes to this shit, I'm the bomb.
I love that.
Okay? Let's close out with this, because we've already gone like a little over about an hour 15 so far. We touched on earlier about ChatGPT, how it wasn't around when you were doing some stuff. Well, I took the liberty of going on ChatGPT. And this is for the sales team. This is some sales questions, okay, in the corporate side of things. Because I don't know anything really about sales, quarterly numbers. Yeah. I know about compression and audio limiters and editing and stuff like that. So I went ahead and came up with some questions. These are basically AI top questions, AI top 10 questions, okay? Now, we don't have to go through all of them.
Okay.
But I'll hit just a few of them, okay? Let's see here. Okay, this is the first one, right? And this is totally AI, but it's going to make me sound like you. Smart.
Thanks.
What are the key factors driving success in iHeartMedia sales efforts in today's media landscape? Is that a good one?
And I love the eyes getting big when you ask the question. We should be on TV. We should get video set up here.
By the way, this is the one episode where I wish I had video of you, because you're very telegenic. Me, not so much. But this is the one episode where I'm like, man, it'd be great so people could could see you. But there'll be a post about it with me and you for the podcast cover. But yeah, so what's the driving success behind iHeartMedia sales?
Well, I think there's a lot of different things. It starts with our innovation and the fact that we have an unbelievable asset base that people can pull from. The challenges that we face is we've got to figure out a way to bundle all of those together. At our core, we're the largest media company out there in terms of reach. We dominate it, and what we've done is we've constantly invested. Radio gets a bad rap. The fact of the matter is, in 1970, we reached 9 out of 10 Americans. Today, we reach 9 out of 10 Americans. Our reach is unprecedented. But then what we've done very strategically and under the leadership of Bob Pittman and Rich Bressler is we've added the iHeartRadio app so we can reach people anywhere and everywhere they are. We're the #1 ad-supported streaming app that's out there. We dominate that, and it's something that we're very, very proud of. But having that app has also allowed us to have data. And now we have data on individuals that have decided they've opted in to give us their data. That makes us a data company. And from there, we build out a data stack. The third real pillar here is the fact that we are the largest podcast company. In 2018, we made an acquisition of Stuff Media. It was a great acquisition. From there, we've been able to propel ourselves into being the dominant podcast company out there. And then the last piece is the fact that we are everywhere when it comes to events. Right. Over 20,000 events.
Just had the iHeartRadio Music Awards.
It was huge. I was sitting in that audience, and I was so blown away by the job. John Sykes and Tom Pullman and their entire team did Cher to Beyonce to Tate McRae to Taylor Swift.
It was wild.
It was a moment to be proud of.
Yeah.
But you take all of that, and we go back to the fact that Bob and Rich are always being progressive on things we can do. Then we build out a data stack against that. We buy companies like Radio Jar. We buy companies like Triton. Now we have all these tools that we can do. So back to your original question, like, what do you need to do to be at the top of your game in sales? Well, I always say to people, greatness is a grind. If you're willing to come in every day and grind, if you're willing to come in every day and do the things we ask you to do, but then put your own personal touch on it, you're going to be successful. But greatness is a grind, and accept that and move forward.
That was good, man.
Thank you.
That was really good. I mean, it's just wild to hear you speak, Kev. When we have those all-staff meetings, it's just like and you're thinking in free thought. It's like you're freestyling these thoughts. It sounds like it's on a teleprompter.
Well, it's not.
I don't know, man. I don't know. You're like from the future or something. Speaking of which, iHeartMedia Music Awards. This isn't the AI questions, but let me just go back to my notes real quick because I want to ask you this before we move on. Okay. This is me asking you, climbing the corporate ladder, trying to become full-time, asking for a friend, which is really me. Okay, I've been here for 5+ years, not 6 yet, but it's been over 5. January 11th was my 5th year of being here at iHeartMedia part-time. How can the old Omatic here get to climb the corporate ladder and get full-time? And not just me, but anybody else who's in my type of position, part-time. They dedicate themselves. I've been dedicating myself to this position and then some with Big Boy commercial production, the podcast, doing Chase Cuts. You know what Chase Cuts is?
No.
It's Eric Chase runs a website called Chase Cuts. It's ran through Premier Networks. It's an imaging service to basically every Kiss FM in the country under iHeart. So there's been that happening for the last 11 years. So I've been I dedicated my life to this job.
Yeah.
How would somebody like me grow into a full-time position? And is it attainable now, considering just everything that happened since COVID? Money isn't the same, etc.
I think anything's attainable. I think you have to make yourself invaluable. I think you're doing a lot of the things. You realize where some of your weaknesses were in the past and the challenges that you had with individuals and in inter-office relationships. Yeah. I think you're doing all you can to clean that up. That's step one. Mm-hmm. Step two is staying very close to John Peake, and John Peake being able to counsel you and be able to look at how does this make sense. And then thirdly, and I said it in the onset, be invaluable. The stuff you're doing with Big Boy, be the glue. Yeah. If you're not here, the organization feels your presence not being here. There's nothing I like more than you talked about the fact that I've ran this market over 10 years in 2 different instances. But when I left the first time and was doing some other things for the company, everyone told me they missed my presence.
I know I did.
The presence.
Oh, yeah.
And that's the way you become invaluable, and that's the way you get these opportunities to be like full-time, is because people realize that they need you.
Yeah, that's a very good answer. Thank you for saying that. And also, just on a B side of that, corporate, climb the corporate ladder, I've never really been invited. I've never been invited to any of the iHeart events.
Wow.
And I don't want to.
Sometimes you got to ask, okay, honestly,
because I'd like to attend one of those. Like I feel a little left out, but then I also know that because I don't say anything, nobody thinks of it because I'm out of sight, out of mind.
And because you didn't say anything, they don't think about it the next year. Like, hey, we should have invited him because he really would have gone.
Yeah, and I would like to go
because there's a lot of people here that get invited and they go, and it's a burden.
It's a burden.
They don't want to be there.
How dare you? Exactly. I mean, I would go pretty much to any. I want to but one of the big events, like the iHeartRadio Music Awards, I would have loved to have been there, just in the audience.
Yeah, exactly.
I just want to be a part of it, just knowing that I was a part of this.
We'll make your dream come true next year.
Yeah. Thank you, Kevin LeGrett. Okay, let's just a couple more here. Okay, so let's go back to the AI thing real quick. The AI question. Let me just jump to the 10th question, and then I want to ask you. We're going to close out with this Big Boy / remix question that I have. Big Boy likes to ask about the raft question. If you were on a raft and two people were on the raft with you, but you could only save one and the other one had to drown, who would it be? Who would you save? I remix it to a zombie question, but we're going to close out with that, okay? So we're going to get that to in a second. 10th AI question here is, and we skip from 1 to 10. I'm not reading them all. Kevin LeGrett doesn't have that kind of time. Looking back on your journey, Kevin LeGrett, is there anything you wish you had known or done differently when you were starting out in radio?
I don't think I wish I had known, because I think the greatest education is experience. So I needed to go through some of the rocky roads. I would say, just like we've talked about a lot here, I think it's, sometimes the relationships, and I wish I had handled relationships a little bit differently. I've been very good probably the last 15, 20 years with making sure that I keep in contact with people and I foster and continually let people know that I care about them and keep those relationships alive. But I don't really think there's a lot that I would change or I would challenge myself that I wish I had known. Mm-hmm. I wish I had made more money earlier. I wish I was full-time earlier. Same. I wish I had some different opportunities earlier. And I think as you look back, I talked earlier about sacrificing. Yeah. I'm not sure that all the sacrifices I made, working Saturdays and Sundays, working till 8, 9 o'clock at night, were always the right decisions.
Right.
And that sometimes if I worked smarter instead of harder, it may have been less stress on my family, less stress on myself, etc.
I got you on that. It's almost like it wasn't necessary.
Exactly.
And that was the other thing I wanted to ask you about sacrifice. I know we're out of time here, but making that journey across the country to move to LA, you're an Angelino now. You know that,
totally.
right?
Oh, yeah,
you're from New York. You say Excedra. Yeah. I love it. But you're here now. Once you're 5 years here in LA, I think it's 5 years. You're in Angelino. Yeah, have you been through an earthquake here yet?
I've been through like 3 or 4.
3 of them, right? Did it scare the shit out of you first
time ever here in this building. And Greg Ashlock, who used to be our CEO of the Markets Group, I was in his office and he goes, dude, look across the street. And I didn't realize buildings were on rollers.
Yes.
And so right across the street where Warner Brothers is, that building was, I was like, holy crap. I called my wife immediately after because she was back in New York, and I'm like, you have no idea what just happened. And then I want to say it was a couple years ago. It was the weekend that Stranger Things came out over July 4th, and we had a pretty good one.
I remember that.
And I remember I was walking in from my garage, and I'm like,
yeah,
I kind of felt like I drank too much. I felt like I was drunk. I was like, whoa, what? And then we had a bad.
It's pretty wild, man. You weren't here for the Northridge one.
No,
though,
I don't want to be.
Well, there's another one coming, Kevin LeGrett.
Especially we look at what happened in Taiwan this week.
I know that's scary, man.
It's really scary.
But it's part of just evolution. It's part of what's we're on the tectonic plates. We're on San Andreas Fault. Earthquakes are gnarly, and I feel like the earthquakes that do hit, the big ones, like the Northridge, or we haven't had one like that in a long time, but it's coming. I feel like it really weeds out the people who are willing to stick it out. Because people from out of state, like yourself, either they come here and they get a dose of a solid earthquake, and they're like, fuck that, I'm out.
Exactly.
Right? Because you can't predict them. Not yet, at least. You can predict hurricanes, snow, weather, being snowed in, whatnot. Okay, let's close out right now with my remix of Big Boy's question, which is his raft question. We're going to remix it to zombies, okay? So, hello, Kevin LeGrett. There's a zombie outbreak, right? People are getting bit left and right. and there's only one hypo syringe. Well, you don't want to say vaccine because it sends people running for the hills. So we'll just say there's like a ZepiPen, which is a cure to keep you from turning into a zombie, right? There's only 2 people. Both of them have been bitten. John Peake and Jeff Thomas.
Okay.
Right? So John Peake gets bit. Jeff Thomas gets bit. JT. Who do you let turn into a zombie, and who do you save? Who does the hypo syringe go to?
It's a great question. I think that some days neither. But no. I love both of them. I probably poke both of them. Give them both half of it. Oh. It's hard for me to choose, right, because JT was my partner for those 10 years. Mm-hmm. We had a great run together. I think the world of him. Mm-hmm. And John Peake, we've not been together as long. I think it's like 8 or 9 years now. We brought John in from San Diego, but he's always been a good partner. He's always been willing to listen. Yeah. He's had to deal with some of my rants and raves.
Same.
But he's a really good executive. Yeah. So it would be really tough for me to make that call.
So I give them a halfer.
A halfer each.
Right.
Yeah.
So they'd be half zombie and half okay.
And I would be running because I know John would want to bite my neck or something.
John Peake would have like this kind of answer, and this is my John Peake impression. He'd be like, have you asked Raph?
Yeah, exactly.
That's kind of his go-to. Yeah. Am I right about that?
Totally.
Right?
Totally.
So listen. Kevin LeGrett, I can talk to you for like another...
My wife's going to kill you. I told her I'd be home tonight by about 7:15.
Oh, my God. Well, tell her anytime she wants to come on the podcast, too.
Oh, no. She's protected. She can't come on the podcast. She'll tell you too many things.
Kevin LeGrett, I can't thank you enough for doing this, man. This is such an honor and a privilege to sit and get inside your mind because, we don't really get to talk to each other like in this kind of long format. Agreed. You know what I mean? And I think it's good for the sales team that I know is going to tune into this. It's important.
And I promise you I'm coming back. I want to be on episode 100.
Really?
So lock me down now. So you got to get yourself 49 more.
I'm going to try. So can I get one more Excedra?
Once in a while, we'll see if we can add that and do this and that and then etc. etc.
Kevin LeGrett, you're the man. Thank you so much, sir.
Appreciate it.
Oh, good for you. And how was it?
The Sketch-O-Matic Show.
Hey, too much information and shit, man.
Shut your mouth, essay.
Okay, bye.
I always say to people, greatness is a grind. If you're willing to come in every day and grind, if you're willing to come in every day and do the things we ask you to do, but then put your own personal touch on it, you're going to be successful. But greatness is a grind, and accept that and move forward.